Welcome, and thank you for joining us for the Illinois Extension webinar series on our values. My name is Amanda Cole, and I'm the Assistant Director for Strategy Planning and Implementation. The Living Our Values webinar series is designed to foster a deeper connection to the core values that shape Illinois Extension: collaboration, credibility, inclusivity, and learning. Through this series, we aim to strengthen our shared understanding of these values, provide practical strategies for integrating them into our daily work, and cultivate a sense of unity across our organization. By engaging in these conversations, we affirm our commitment to excellence and ensure that our collective efforts continue to make a meaningful impact in the communities we serve. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping items to go over. Today's session is being recorded and will be shared within 2 weeks of today. You are welcome to submit questions at any time using the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We have reserved time for questions at the end of the presentation. If you'd like to ask your question live, please raise your hand and we will unmute you. Now it is my pleasure to turn it over to Bobby, who will introduce our presenter for today's session.
Good morning. I'm Bobby Lewis-Sibley, and I am the Outreach Associate for Strategy, Planning, and Implementation. Our presenter today is Dr. Durriyyah Kemp. Dr. Kemp serves as Associate Director for Region 1. In this role, Dr. Kemp provides leadership and vision for aligning resources and partners to support the development and delivery of regional and statewide educational initiatives. She manages field operations and supports county directors and staff in her region. Durriyyah, I am now going to turn it over to you.
But the plan is to use Mentimeter, so hopefully it works. So once I activate the poll, please feel free to access, either go to menti.com on your computer or mobile device, or you'll be able to scan the QR code by typing or typing in the code that will be shown on the screen. Okay. So by the end of the webinar today, you will be able to understand the Illinois Extension credibility value and its significance, learn strategies to demonstrate and maintain credibility in your role, and apply the credibility value to everyday interactions and initiatives. So now we're going to kick things off by jumping into our first poll question, which is, what does credibility mean to you? I think everyone has had an opportunity to submit their response. So it looks like being trustworthy came in first for today's group, followed by providing evidence-based information, and then following through on commitments, and then having expertise and transparency. And of course, all of these are very, very important when it comes to credibility. Thank you for that. We're actually going to talk quite a bit about trust and being trustworthy. So definitely interested to see that one had the most responses. Okay, so when Bobby and Amanda canvassed the state this past fall and conducted the strategic plan integration workshops and met with all of you and your units and regions, they collected what you shared about credibility. And me being curious about the most common themes, I took most of the words and phrases that you all shared and created a word cloud. And as you can see, and likely no surprise, research, transparency, peer-reviewed, followed through, integrity, accountability, curriculum, are some of the most used words and phrases our Illinois Extension colleagues associate with credibility. Now, one of the other common words that appeared in the word cloud was trust. Trust is foundational to credibility. It's the linchpin, so to speak, of it. And trust is what Marshall Stewart, who I'm sure many of you are familiar with, uses to discuss credibility. Dr. Stewart was one of our keynote speakers at our annual conference a few years ago and is currently serving as the Senior Vice President um, of University Engagement and Partnerships at Kansas State. And he said that trust is the currency of extension work. Once lost, it is difficult to regain. Credibility comes from integrity, expertise, and community engagement. As an integral component of our land grant university, and with all the diversity and complexities our organization brings, it's essential to prioritize credibility, as it includes being accountable to ourselves and to all of our stakeholders who are fully invested in our extension system. And when we think about currency, we think of value. And currency is what Dr. Stewart utilized for us to think about what's being lost or gained. And when we think about currency, we're thinking about value, which also highlights the significant value of credibility in our line of work. But even more noteworthy than that is the fragility of trust that this quote kind of speaks to, as trust and credibility are easier to lose than initially receive or regain. Trust is pretty complex and can even be multidimensional, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Whenever I see our values, I always think about just the incredible sense of richness um, that these words represent. There's an incredible sense of richness that I feel whenever I read about our core values or see them listed. You know, they aren't empty words. There's strength and meaning behind each one, and they serve to ground us and even connect us to the public in ways that we aren't always aware of. While serving, it's kind of interesting because while serving on a search committee yesterday, one of the candidates specifically listed our core values as one of the primary reasons that they were drawn to our organization. I think all of us on the committee felt a sense of pride that someone, was sharing that they too are interested in working alongside of us and living out these values as well. And during that same search, a candidate inquired about extension status in the face of the recent executive orders. And one of my counterparts, the Associate Director for Region 2, Janice McCoy, kind of provided an off-the-cuff response to the question that was very much rooted in our values. And I know that all of us on the committee couldn't help but be more pride and gratitude to be a part of an organization, that holds these values so dear. So when we think about Illinois Extension and our commitment to credibility, we're saying that we act with integrity and build trust by using evidence-based research, following through on our commitments, and supporting our stakeholders to effectively face challenges through tested solutions and new innovations. So now let's go a bit deeper into what credibility is. Credibility is a cornerstone of Illinois Extension work. It's foundational to community trust. It's so important to have and to protect when we're out engaging with communities. It's essential for effective knowledge transfer. It's key to meaningful partnerships and critical for program success. Building trust within our communities and with our stakeholders is important as it drives collaboration. And while we no longer call ourselves the Cooperative Extension Service, trust is what makes cooperative successful. When there's trust, information is shared freely, and feedback loops work smoothly and are in full effect. When there's trust, you're better positioned to influence your stakeholders, which is so crucial in our work and vital for credibility. We want to influence good food choices. We want to influence safe environmental practices. We want to influence healthy behaviors, and we will not have positive influence without trust. In this way, your partners and stakeholders have confidence that what you're sharing is reliable and evidence-based, and that what you're sharing with them is to make a positive difference in their lives because you care about finding solutions to problems and discoveries that address their community's needs and concerns. And, as the saying goes, trust goes both ways. So when we think about trust, we can think about it in the sense that it is bidirectional. And this is kind of like as a result of, the interaction that we have with other people, with other groups, with other partners, and even other institutions. But when building a trusting relationships, there's also levels to it, right? So it involves a level of vulnerability for at least one of the parties that are involved. And in many relationships, trust is perceived differently by those involved parties due to imbalanced levels of vulnerability. For example, if we think about the relationship between a doctor and a patient. So, compared to a physician, the patient is likely to feel a greater need for trust building since they're in a more vulnerable position. Or if we think about the dynamics between a barber and a customer, the customer is likely to feel a greater need for trust building since they're in a more vulnerable position because they're the one getting their hair done. And so, likewise, if you're facilitating a workshop or teaching a course, it is less critical for you to trust your participants than for them to trust you and the information you share. Because more often than not, we are the facilitators and providers of direct education because we teach, we offer fact sheets, we provide information on safety practices, we share policy information. So the responsibility is ours to maintain high credibility and provide information that is accurate and trustworthy. And this is important for you as an individual extension professional and for us organizationally. If people, you know, don't believe the messenger, they won't believe the message. So now let's take a look at credibility in action. And so we're going to consider the following scenario. During the cicada epidemic, an extension educator became the go-to resource for evidence-based information on food safety. Just think for a second about why was the educator successful? And now, using Mentimeter, I'll have you to share some open-ended responses to that question. And think about why the educator may have been successful. What made the difference during this epidemic? How might they have gone about doing their work and connecting with the public? What actions did they take? The trusted agent, they provided fact-based information, expertise, so perhaps that was even the reputation that they had as an expert, as a subject matter expert. They shared research-based information, so the information that they were shared was grounded in research, so it was reliable. It's fact-based, had a history of sharing accurate information, so information that could be trusted. So they were a reliable source. Perhaps they already had a connection in the community. So they were known. They had done their due diligence to get to know the community and get to know the people. Yeah, lots of trust. Okay, yeah. So definitely all of the information and responses that you shared are accurate. Here's just a few more that I included, which are um, pretty much everything that you all shared as well. Relied on research-based information, communicated clearly and consistently. They were responsive to the community's needs and transparent about what we knew and didn't know, all of which are essential for credibility in building up credibility within our communities. I think it's kind of useful for all of us, again, regardless of the role or position that you have in extension, to say to ourselves, the public can trust the information I share because what? And then being able to finish that sentence. Again, the public can trust the information I share because we all need to have a response and be able to finish that statement. Let's take a look at another one. In this scenario, an extension educator's long-term work with local farmers led to the adoption of sustainable practices that improved yield. Just take a second to consider that. And why did it work? We won't use Menti for this one, but if you can just think to yourself, why or how might this work? Here are a few reasons, a couple reasons why it worked. They built relationships through consistent follow through. The educator was present and had built long standing relationships. They showed consistency in presence, follow through, and in the quality of their work. So they were able to demonstrate results with data, and the farmers were able to trust it. This next one, we're going to use Menti again. And I want you to think about how you build credibility in your work. Again, within whatever role you play within extension, whatever your role is, how do you build credibility? And I want you to think about which you practice most frequently. How do you maintain a high level of competence? Results are coming in. So we have about 47, 46, 47% seeing building consistent relationships. Yeah. And that's one of the things that we really have to be mindful of and nurture the relationships that we have with stakeholders in the communities, continue to work on those, ensure that we are being responsive, that we're showing up, when we need to, doing all of the things that um, help support those relationships and to grow so that we continue to be the go-to resource for outreach education for the communities that we serve. That one's followed up by following through on commitments. Again, says a lot about trust. And if our communities and our partners can trust us, if we follow through, if we do what we say we're going to do, when we show up. And these other ones are also really important as well. Sharing research-based information, of course, being transparent about limitations, again, being upfront and honest about your capacity, either as a professional or being upfront if it's a topic, for instance, that we don't cover or a topic that we don't have expertise in currently, and being upfront about that. And of course, staying current in your field. And again, that's across the spectrum within our organization. We always want to be engaging in professional development and doing things to help advance us in our particular fields. Thank you all for participating in that. Okay. So cooperative extension's strength lies in its ability to bridge university research with local knowledge, earning credibility through service and impact. I love quotes. And this one helps to connect multiple elements to credibility and highlight the importance and beauty of what we do through community outreach education, scholarship, and even applied research. I think it really just kind of connects it um, all together. And I really believe that that is where our strength lies. I love the work that we do and how we give back to our communities, for this reason, because we are bringing research-based information to the people who we serve to help transform their lives. And that is incredibly powerful. As we've alluded to this morning, credibility is multifaceted, and there are a lot of things that can impact it and contribute to it. But we're going to focus on four today. So the first one is knowledge. Nurturing your competence through continued learning, development, and growth, staying abreast in your field really goes a long way when it comes to building credibility. And again, like I said earlier, that is across every field within Illinois Extension, from our office support to our coordinators to educators, specialists. It doesn't matter. Being competent in what we know and how we share information internally and externally, again, highly contributes to how we are viewed as a credible entity. The second is transparency. Credibility often stems from open and honest communication. Quite simply, communities trust those who are upfront about their intentions, including programmatic and research intentions, as transparency helps to reduce suspicion and builds confidence in who you are as an extension professional and in who we are as an organization. And when extension professionals consistently meet expectations, follow through on commitments, and deliver on programmatic promises, we build credibility and are labeled a reliable source. Over time, this helps to foster sustainable trust within the community as our actions align with our words and with who we say we are on our website and in our written materials. Credibility also increases when actions align with the needs and priorities of the community. People trust those who act in their best interests. those who are actively engaged in working to improve the lives of those who live and work in the communities that we serve. In this way, we're viewed as an organization that is responsive to the needs of the people because they see us, because we're there. I have one more Menti poll that I want us to engage in, and that is to share one knowledge resource that you find valuable in your work. So what various forms of data, reports, perhaps repositories or expertise you seek, what informs your work? What books or manuals do you read? What is it that you go to help inform the work you do? What's a highly valuable knowledge resource that you utilize? And I know in today's world with the speed and access that we have to information and so much information is just always at our fingertips. We definitely have to be mindful and take care in ensuring that we are using credible sources, credible research-based sources. But we have a lot to choose from. Okay, so ACES press releases, that's good. Our extension website, our university website, newsletters, journal articles. Yeah, journal articles are definitely a go-to for me. I love staying on top of new research and seeing what's out there. Harvard Business Review. Oh, fantastic. AP Style Book. Lots and lots of resources. Again, the important piece here is making sure that we really take care to use credible resource-based sources because we're inundated with so much every day, and we have access to an incredible amount of information. So we definitely have to be very careful with what we're using, how we're using it, um, how we're sharing it, with the public, ensuring that we are crediting, um, the right sources, ensuring that we are citing those sources. Very, very important. Because not doing that certainly can be detrimental to our credibility, our standing as it relates to credibility in the communities and with the public. There's a few best practices in thinking about these key elements for credibility. Now, of course, the best practices list is not all inclusive, but it gives you a solid idea of what credibility at work may look like. There are many other characteristics that are important to credibility too, like responsibility or confidence and even empathy. But when we look at these four, they certainly give us a nice starting point or foundation to kind of go off of. Staying informed, with the latest research, connecting to campus specialists. And I know that that was just noted in the previous poll as well. Participating in professional development, subscribing to relevant journals and newsletters, and overall just staying current, in your field. When it comes to transparency, communicating clearly and honestly, citing sources, being upfront about what you don't know. People respect you more when you're just honest about that. Explain the why behind recommendations, why you're recommending one thing over the next and being able to support that. Using accessible language. When it comes to reliability, delivering consistent, high quality programs, implementing curriculum as it was designed, following through on those commitments, creating systems of accountability, documenting and sharing outcomes. It's so important that we have that follow through and that we don't overcommit upfront. It's important just to have those conversations upfront, especially when we are working with the public. Defining what stakeholders should expect from you and what you expect from them, again, in the beginning is critical. Understanding their needs and being able to set those realistic expectations really goes a long way. Being responsive, adapting to community needs, conducting needs assessment, soliciting and incorporating feedback, recognizing changing conditions, being able to read the room, innovating within evidence-based frameworks. And so being able to be adaptable, be reflexive, to show up, to ensure that the information, that you're sharing is relevant, that it's useful. It shows that we're listening and that we're understanding, those needs. I'm going to launch one last poll. And this one looks at a scenario where someone in the public was citing a popular but non-scientific source, and this community member challenged the information that you provided. What is your best first response? Mm, 100%. One. Oh, okay, now we're seeing a little bit of variety here. Yeah, and so, with at at any time, given the context, um, either of these responses could be the right response. But I absolutely agree, with you all that listening and leading with listening will always be a good choice. And so listening and asking questions about their perspective to learn more and to ensure that we understand where they're coming from, and why they are challenging information that we may have shared. So listening to ensure that we understand, what's happening. But then being able to, perhaps the right response is to suggest that you both do more research and be able to come back and kind of discuss some things later. Perhaps it's a topic that you were upfront about to say, I haven't done much research in this particular area. This is something that I want to look more into, and maybe we can revisit the conversation because maybe there's something that I may have missed, and maybe there's credibility to what they're saying. And then being able to provide additional research to support your position, again, will always be a good thing when we can back up what it is, that we're saying. So if there are multiple reliable sources that we're able to pull from, or more than one research source that you're able to pull from and share, is always important. And then not necessarily to be able to say that your source is better than theirs, but perhaps there is some reasoning as to why what you are sharing has more validity because it's more reliable or, research-based. And so being able to explain that and share that information is really important when it comes to credibility. But leading with listening will always be a fantastic choice. The other thing that I want to mention before I move off of this slide and start to wrap up is that it's so important that we, um, as an organization, ensure that we are all helping to build a credible reputation, because we're all a part of this organization. And whenever we're out and we're representing our organization, we are contributing positively or negatively to the reputation that our organization has. And so building a credible reputation is essential for us. Perhaps some of you can reference a time when we did not live up to the elements of this value of credibility and had to reestablish trust. Credibility is connected to accountability and taking responsibility for the moments that we didn't get it right, or we made mistakes or came up short, were ill prepared, for a presentation, or inadvertently overlooked a stakeholder's email. Maybe, you weren't where you're supposed to be because you didn't get the email, you didn't see it. But without credibility, trust erodes and can lead to fragmented relationships with community members and partners. However, when we own up to those mistakes and work to address them, that can help reinforce trust and repair some missteps. Remember, building credibility and trust takes time, but the value that it adds to our organization cannot be overstated. And so I want to end with a few key takeaways. Number one is that we value credibility in Illinois Extension. It requires knowledge, transparency, reliability, and responsiveness. Building credibility is an ongoing process that requires intention. We've been intentional with including credibility as one of our 4 core values. And so we want to lead with that when we put this particular value in action. Your daily actions reinforce our organizational credibility. Sometimes it's the small things, responding to an email, right away, responding to a caller's question and giving them factual information. Our communities count on us as a trusted resource, and we want to continue to be that for them. And now I think we are going to open it up for any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you for that so much for that presentation, Dr. Kemp. Myself and a few other panelists are going to be reviewing the Q&A box. So if you have a question that you would like to submit, that is one way to do it. The other is if you would raise your hand, we can unmute you and you can ask your question out loud. See a hand up. Larissa, you should be unmuted.
Yes, I think I am. But thank you, Dr. Kemp, for the presentation, and thank you all who put it together. I found it to be very informative. I'm just on my first year, a little bit over by a few weeks. I'm happy to be here with the university. And what I have to say is more of a comment or than a question. And it's in regards to the question for credibility that we did. I think it was the first question. I'm just a little bit surprised to see that trustworthy came up first or before following through on commitments. Because as I see that, of course, being trustworthy is key because we're being transparent and authentic in what we're delivering for our programs. Um, the reason I think I was just surprised to see that come first is because for me and my personal values, I believe that following through on commitments, it automatically show, it's something that you don't have to explain. Is already there in your actions, and people can see it. As the old saying goes, our reputations precede us. People kind of know what to expect from you through your actions. So that was one of the things that I did find interesting, and I just wanted to kind of elaborate on that a little bit. Like I said, it wasn't really a question; it was just something that I found interesting and wanted to share. Thanks for taking my comment.
Yeah, thank you for that. Larissa, I think I will say that all of these are so closely connected, and there's so many aspects of the things that we do, with the actions that we take, the our behaviors and how we respond to certain things all impact whether or not we are viewed as being a credible source. But it also speaks to whether or not the public can trust us. And so I think part of when you talk about being able to follow through on our commitments, it's so close, right? It's so in line with being trustworthy. I think the public may um, find us trustworthy, or we may deem being trustworthy as important because we follow through, on our commitments, because we are transparent, um, because we have expertise, in an area, in a particular subject that we are always fine tuning and enhancing, and we are mindful that we are showing that we are providing fact-based, information, to the public. All leads to, a level of trustworthiness. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think that they're so close and very much interconnected.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I agree. That's why I just kind of thought that and like you say, they by them all being connected, they all kind of um just kind of explain each other, I guess, because they are so close connected. And again, I just thought that following through on commitment, because I kind of, like I say, those are my personal values. I grew up being taught that let your nay be nay, your yay be yay, and follow through on what you say you're going to do. And when people see your actions and know that you are honest, they know that you're a trustworthy person. So I do agree with the connection and all of the answers that were, provided there.
Thank you for that question and response as well. And Dr. Kemp, we've had a question submitted online. It is, how does credibility translate into social media and marketing campaigns?
Yeah, I think it's all, again, so important. We have to be mindful of our reputation in virtual spaces, online spaces, as well as, in our written material, and when we're in person and engaging, with the public. I think it's so important that we are who we say we are. And so when it comes to not just credibility, but the other three core values as well, it's important that we actually are living, those out. So when we're marketing our programs and, all of the great work, that we're doing, it's important that it is aligned again with who we say we are. And if we're putting information out there that this particular event is happening and that this particular speaker it's going to be there again, that follow through, that, level of commitment that they know that they can trust what they're going to receive, that we're going to be there, we're going to show up. It all matters because we are one organization, at the end of the day. And so we're all individual, people contributing to our mission, vision, and our values. And so ensuring that how we show up, who we say we are, all of that is in alignment, matters, whether it's via social media or through a marketing campaign.
Thank you for that response. We have another question. Oh, Bridget would like to add. Bridget, would you like for me to unmute you? If not, I will share the consistency in branding, voice, quality, and responsiveness and access are ways that the Marcom team contributes to credibility as well. And Bridget, you are unmuted.
I think you read that very well, Amanda. And I certainly echo everything that Durriyyah said. I really do think that's why we've been so earnest in our efforts to provide brand consistency, because people come to associate that branding with the credibility. And so they know when they see that a Black eye, they see that Illinois Extension mark, they know they can trust the content. And so that's why speaking with one voice and having branding consistency over time actually really increases our visibility and the credibility that's associated with it.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that question and for both of your responses. We have another question. It's a little lengthy, so hopefully I will be able to read it to you, but Durriyyah, if you want to also reference it while I'm reading it out loud. Do you have any suggestions on how to steer conversations away from ideological, political differences? A university sometimes viewed in a blanket way as liberal, whereas the community is predominantly viewed as conservative, and back to fact-based reference to maintain trust and credibility.
Yeah, I would say that, you nailed it kind of in the question is keeping conversations based on number one, the topic, right? And so whatever it is that you are there to teach or present or converse about, that it's on topic. But then just ensuring that your engagements are rooted in research-based evidence, that you're not really going outside of that. I think a lot of the things that are happening in society today aren't necessarily things that we would need to incorporate into any conversations that we're having, with the public. It's certainly, a bit separate. We can always steer them toward any public statements that university leadership, has released if they have specific questions, about that. As I, alluded to during the presentation, we had a question during a search, yesterday, about that. And like I say, one of the, the other associate directors' response was so in line with our values, and who we are. And she answered the question that way, and it was spot on. And so I would just, stay on topic. I know it may be more difficult, these days, but always be mindful that we are in our official capacities representing, each other in our organization. And so we don't want to kind of get ourselves into any issues by not doing that.
Thank you for submitting that question as well as responding to that, Dr. Kemp. And just remind everyone, if there are any additional questions, there's still a few minutes remaining. You can raise your hand or submit them online. Again, thank you to Dr. Kemp for today's presentation. And I'm actually going to turn it back over to Bobby.
Thank you, Amanda. So in closing, just thank you again, everyone, for being here and participating today and all the great questions. This session is the second of 4 in our value series. Our next webinar will focus on the value of inclusivity, and that's going to take place on April 30th, 2025. Dr. Kamaya Wallace-Bashard, who's the Assistant Director for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Access, and the interim Assistant Dean and Program Leader for the Integrated Health Disparities. She will be the presenter next month. So we hope that you can enjoy us then for that inclusivity webinar. And we hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.